Welcome to the Real Paranormal Stories podcast with your host, Christopher Buckner. Send your stories to realparanormalstoriespodcast@gmail.com. Royalty-free music provided by Kevin MacLeod and Tabletop Audio. And now, let's take a trip into the paranormal. This story comes from Reddit user Vengeful Peace. And this is their story. So this story is one of my earliest memories, and it takes place around Christmas. I was about 3 or 4 years old, and my family was having a get-together. I remember I was in the living room standing next to the Christmas tree, while everyone else was in the kitchen grabbing plates of food, having conversations, and laughing. I could see the doorway to the kitchen from where I was, and it was very easy for everyone to look through and keep an eye on me if they wanted to. Now, that said, I wasn't alone. There was an older man who was also there with me next to the tree. He had glasses and wore a red short-sleeved shirt with black pants. I didn't really know who he was at the time, but he smiled and talked with me. He even held me for a brief moment. I don't remember much past that harmless interaction, but it was a fond memory I had. Years later, when I was about 16 or so, my dad and I were in his house having a conversation, reminiscing about old memories. Then we started talking about our earliest memories. I brought up my first Christmas memory and told him about the man who held me. He asked me who it was, and I pointed to a picture on my dad's wall. I said, "That guy. I vividly remember him holding me next to a Christmas tree." My dad went quiet for a moment and gave me a stare like I was crazy. Then he asked if I was sure, and I replied, "Positive. He was even wearing the same clothes as he is in that picture." Then my dad told me that was impossible. When I asked why, he answered, "Because he died before you were born. That's the great-grandfather you were named after." I was beyond shocked by that reply, because I have such a crystal clear memory of our encounter. I still think about it to this day. And that is their story. This story comes from Reddit user Hippie Froggy. And this is their story. When I was 11 years old, my dad took me and my brother to a party. He apparently knew the people, but me and my brother didn't. They had just moved into the house, and that was what this party was for. After about an hour, a man came up to me and a group of kids, asking us to go to his house to grab some more firewood because we were running out. Us all being trusting kids all said, "Okay," and ran to have fun. I remember feeling uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside and kept moving onward until I reached the house. Each person grabbed 2 pieces of wood, but I only grabbed 1 because I felt that I was too small to carry 2 pieces. Everyone got mad at me and said it was only fair, so I went back for another piece. I made them pinky promise not to leave me, but when I came back out, they were all gone. Realizing I was alone, I started to panic because I didn't know my way back. I had never been there before. I started to scope out the area thinking someone had to stay behind with me, but no one was there. I was about to give up and aimlessly walk around looking for my home when suddenly I saw a girl standing by the front door. She had big curly red hair, big blue eyes, red little freckles, and a white nightgown. She wore nothing on her feet. She looked like one of the girls in the group, so I called out to her, but she just stood silently, staring off blankly. The more I stared at her, the more her body seemed to fall apart. Her hair seemed missing in certain areas. She was skin and bones thin. She had twigs and leaves in her hair, and her skin was pale and soaked. I feared she was getting too cold, so I shouted to her over and over again. She ignored me. Finally, I took a step toward her, and she smiled. Her eyes went jet black and empty. She turned around and ran inside, laughing. I followed her and searched the whole house for half an hour. When I came back out, everyone had come back for me, asking where I was. I was panicked and told them about this injured girl that needed help, but they just looked at me confused. They assured me that there was no girl before laughing at me like I was bonkers. I kept telling them about it, and they were just as confused as I was. We went back to the party and acted like nothing happened, but I had this bad feeling. So I went to the mom at the party and told her the whole story, and she asked me about the man that sent us for more wood because they never needed more in the first place. I gave her a description, and she said that man had never been at the party. She didn't know who I was talking about. She gathered all of us who told the same story about this man, and she said she didn't know who he was. But she was drunk and didn't seem too worried, so she just told us to be safe. And that is their story. That's all for this episode of the Real Paranormal Stories podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review anywhere this podcast can be found.